Welcome to Money Talk Viewpoint. I am your host, Dennis Williams with CashMap Consulting, where we're all about enabling you to use your bank products to shift interest payments to principal payments, enabling you to keep money in your pocket and quickly grow wealth. Thanks for joining us. And today we have with us Charles Dents with Xelantt Profit Strategies. He is all about enabling mid-sized businesses who have moved successfully from that startup phase and are looking to move to the next level, but they've found that they've kind of plateaued in their revenues. So he's here to give us some tips on how to successfully make that transition. Charles, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dennis. I really appreciate being on the show and looking forward to our conversation. And just so that people know, clients ask me to transform their business to increase revenue. And increasing revenue shows up in several ways, whether they're looking for strategic investors or they're just looking to grow their business. And the way that I do that is through increasing knowledge. And then the two things that I'll also include that most do not, and that's the ability to implement and then have sustainable execution. Then the second thing is accelerating process, the strategic processes using AI tools, and as well as then establishing efficient operations, and then finally scaling their companies to surpass their current growth limitations.
So kind of restate that again, and maybe just like 3 bullet points, just so we can be focused on what you're telling.
Yeah. So growth happens in really 3 different ways. That is acceleration of strategies and implementing those strategies using AI tools. Number 2 would be to establish efficient operations. And number 3 is ultimately scaling to grow past limitations.
Okay, that's great. And so each of those is a mouthful to be able to effectively achieve.
Yeah,
and recognizing being a small business owner, I'm already maxed out. So before I'm going to spend a lot of time, I guess my first question would be, Charles, how did you get to this and what makes you an expert?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I started back in 2007, around 2007, 2008, and helping a couple of small startups. And in doing so, I realized that there was a certain skill set that I had that really I had not honed in on and fully recognized. So I began helping additional small startups as well as then moving to larger companies and helping them become successful. And as I started doing that, I started to formulate some strategies that really fit and work time after time. And so then I started helping some larger companies. And basically what that looks like is from a transformation standpoint, where they're trying to get into new markets, they were trying to have new product or service launches, or just simply get unstuck because, as you mentioned earlier, they just plateaued and had become stagnant and didn't know what was next, didn't know how to get to the next level. So because of that, then I really formulated this 5-stage business evolution and just recognizing that there are stages of growth. And number 1 would be startup phase. Number 2 would be the growth phase. Number 3 would be the maturity phase. Number 4, the expansion phase. And number 5, the dominance phase. So those 5 phases really are key. And with each phase, there's a transformation that has to take place by the business owner.
Okay, so when you end up moving into organizations and spending time with them, kind of what have you found is kind of the key pitfalls or mistakes that companies make that are kind of holding them back from being able to grow quickly?
Pitfalls. We all hate pitfalls, whether it's just in life or in business, right? Or in our relationships, et cetera, that they tend to happen. And we need to understand, what causes that. Well, from a business perspective as it relates to growth, there is this thing that I would call overexpansion. And overexpansion being meaning that businesses sometimes they grow too fast and they can't keep up. And so to me, that would be overexpansion and just avoiding that. And so in order to do that, you have to have specific strategies in place and you know where you're going step by step. But also when you overexpand too fast, you also tend to neglect your core customers. And that's always a bad thing, right? You never want to neglect your core customers. And then underestimating competition. So when you underestimate competition, you have not properly put your market research in place that will allow you to understand where your competitors are, and then keeping an eye on your competitors on a consistent basis so that you know when they're launching something new or they have innovated in some way. So it's always key to make sure that that focus is in place. So number one, to stay customer focused. Number two, to be data driven. And number three is also to have financial prudence or to maintain financial prudence. And if those three things are not done, then those pitfalls will show up.
So being a startup, I guess I'm kind of surprised on staying customer focused because
Yeah.
I would think as the startup, being customer focused is the natural. So how does the organization go off track as far as not maintaining customer focus?
Well, sometimes what happens is that companies will be so focused on their product, on their service, that they lose track of what the customer really wants. And it becomes all about what I believe they want as a business owner, as a startup owner. And therefore, I can now be focused so much on my company, so much on my product, so much on my service that I lose track of what the customer actually wants. And that I will say this also, just because they want it doesn't mean that they need it. But we do lose focus of both what they want and what they need and how we then present that to them, because we have to transition them from a want to ensuring that their need is also met, even if they don't understand their need.
So then again, let's act as if I'm your new client.
Okay.
What are you going to have me do different? And maybe before you even say that, when you end up engaging with a company, what's the time frame that I would expect to see changes that it would give me a sense of hope that you're actually on the right track?
Yeah. So we very strategically on board our clients so that we immediately understand what the focus is, what our goals are, what our markers are in terms of success. And we always put a marker at 90 days out to begin to see some transformation. And that doesn't mean that's 100% done, but that means that we begin to see results within 90 days. And that's always our target. And that's what we guarantee, that you'll begin to see some transformation beginning as early as 90 days. And it sounds unrealistic, but when you focus on the right things, then that becomes a reality.
Okay, so walking in the door and you're sitting down with the owner of the company who started it.
Yeah.
What do you have them start doing different? Because they're already busy.
Yeah. Well, number one is that we need to put in place, and this is probably a term that most have probably heard, but we need to look at their scheduling freedom. So scheduling freedom means that they're focused on the things that they need to be focused on, prioritizing the things they need to prioritize. And if you heard the 80-20 rule, 20% of what the startups do, or even established businesses as an owner, 20% of what they do is what makes them money. The other 80% doesn't necessarily make them money. And so we make sure that we help the startup owner or just any business owner understand what the 20% is so that they can effectively manage their time. And we call that scheduling freedom.
So do you have them do time studies or do you
No time studies. We look at what they're doing right now today, and we make adjustments accordingly, help them understand what they should be working on, focused on, and the things that they shouldn't, the things that maybe they simply just need to delegate or put off to another time. But in order to create freedom in their schedule, they have to understand what the real priorities are in order to grow and to scale.
okay. So when you talk about AI is one of the key components moving forward,
Yeah.
and I guess I would also ask when you do this with the owner, how long does it take for them to adjust their schedule usually in order to enable the next step? Does that take a month? Does that take usually does it take a week or what does that mean?
Well, it does look different for each person. And one of the things that when we engage with someone, we're looking for 100% commitment. And those that are really, truly 100% committed, those are ones we want to work with. But it requires them to make adjustments in their schedule immediately. And so, but immediately looks different for each person, right? So it may be a week, it may be 4 weeks, but anything beyond 4 weeks is too long. And we like to stay within a week to 2 weeks. At the end of the day, they are committing to making massive change. And massive change starts with the owner. And unless the owner is willing to make that sacrifice, then the rest of the company potentially suffers from the same type of stagnation or inability to move forward because they're not willing to commit. So the owner willing to commit, willing to make the sacrifices, willing to adjust their schedule in order to make the changes for business growth is highly important. But it could be a week to 4 weeks. And we like to stick within the week to 2 week time frame.
Okay.
It's massive change. It's a massive decision.
So now that's been done, and now the next step that you're moving to, and you talked about using AI with expert guidance. What does that look like?
Well, what we do is so number one, we will absolutely leverage what, just using the buzzword, we'll leverage a tool like ChatGPT to use expert type of prompts that people don't normally use. These are very detailed, deep prompts that become very unique in order to get the results we're looking for. And then on top of that, then we will explore additional AI tools. There are so many AI tools. I have a list of probably over 700 AI tools that accomplish different things for a business. But the reality is that there are only just a few that a company will need to focus on in order to transform their business. Now, you say, why AI? The question is, why not? Companies that don't innovate at this stage in 2024 will be left behind. I can think about companies like Kodak, who basically missed the digital revolution, right? I can think about Blockbuster. And so these are older companies at this point, but they're such a great case study. Kodak, Blockbuster, they didn't transform where Netflix did. Netflix went digital, and Blockbusters, they tried to continue with their same tried approach that just lost ground. So innovation today requires the use of AI.
Okay, and that part of the engagement, is that more of a focus on teaching the owner and a couple of key staff how to use it on a routine basis going forward? Is that your primary objective?
Well, when we first start, and when I say that our strategies are AI infused, they're infused because we have taken uh, components of AI to help accelerate the learning process, so their knowledge increases. And I call it three pillars. So number one, knowledge increases, and then we will look at if there are additional AI tools for implementation. So again, to accelerate the implementation. And then number three is the execution, sustainable execution of what's been implemented. And there are additional AI tools for that. So it depends on the type of platforms that we need to focus on, whether it's CRM platforms, whether it's ERP platforms, or whatever platforms, technology platforms that are needed in order to accelerate the business, transform the business. It could be social media. It could be dealing with social media. And so there are tools that help accelerate. The whole purpose of AI is not for the business owner to learn AI. It's for the business owner to use AI to get results faster, quicker, more effectively, and more efficiently than what they could without using AI tools.
Yeah, but so that being said, you're also helping them understand who's the best person in the organization to stay on top of that, because I'm imagining that's not
Yes,
going to be the business owner.
it's not going to be the business, or it should not be the business owner.
Okay.
If it's the business owner, then the model is not the correct model, because now it's a hub and spoke type of model, and the business owner is the hub, and that was a detriment to scaling in almost every case. But so delegation becomes a key, and we help them understand, who are the right resources to delegate to, and they know the answers to that question already. We just help steer them in the right direction to make sure that it's done effectively.
So that kind of bleeds you into the next one that you talk about as far as efficient organizations, right? So what I'm hearing you saying is that you're adding these elements to boost revenue, and now you're taking them to your next step and creating efficient processes or new efficient processes to make it sustainable. Is that right?
It's both. So it's both making current processes, or particularly from an operational standpoint, making the current processes more efficient. But it also could be some new processes that they're not doing, or just augmenting what they're already doing. So it could be a combination of all of those. In most cases, their operational processes are in place, their procedures are in place. Sometimes they're simply just not documented. So if they're not documented, then ultimately they're probably not consistent, so they're not efficient. And we want to make sure they're documented. In other cases, they're just not robust enough, and so that's when we need to augment and make them more robust. And then finally, in those cases where they don't have the right processes in place to grow, we help them discover those, and then implement them and execute.
So I think you need to expand a little bit more on it's not robust enough. How do you identify whether or not something's robust?
Well, some of that comes with doing research, right? So, for example, let's take marketing, for example. If they have a marketing plan, hopefully they do. If they have a marketing plan, is that marketing plan, does it cover all the bases necessary, and do they understand what that means? So if you take who are they engaging with, in the marketplace in order to market their products and services, and do they understand what that avatar looks like? In today's business world, I believe the percentage is 75%, I believe it is. I may be off a little bit on that percentage, but 75% of decision makers from a buying standpoint are millennials and Gen Z. So if you don't know that you're dealing with millennials and Gen Z, how do you know how to engage with them? You have to engage with them differently than you engage with baby boomers, for example. They have a different thought process. From a marketing standpoint, where are the engagements occurring? So that group, they do 83% of their research online, on social media, before they ever engage with a vendor. So understanding that means that you also have to have robustness, if you will, in your social media platforms, on your website. Websites, as they're built today, are not built to transform or to convert leads to customers. They're just not built that way. And you have to understand that you have to build them in a way that not only do they attract leads, but also that they help convert those leads to customers. And then you have to understand how to use that data to nurture those leads. So all that comes into play, and that's what I mean by robust, is that you have to delve into all of the components of every strategy, every strategy that a company uses. You have to delve into it in depth to understand all the nuances so that they can be as effective as possible, particularly against their competitors.
Okay, I have another question, but I think maybe I'll go to the next step when
Okay.
you then talk about your point number 3, scaling. It would seem to me that once you've just done what you just shared about being robust,
Yeah.
scaling is the result. It just happens. Or is there something more you end up doing to create scalability?
Yeah. So scalability certainly is the result. But the other thing about scalability is that scalability also aligns with your strategy. And you have to know where you're going. Just to grow is one thing, but to grow intentionally is another thing. And intentional growth happens through strategy. So you know where you're going. Certainly there are companies that have boomed by accident, but that is the exception and not the rule. Sustainable growth comes through having strategy in place. I won't even say strategic planning, because strategic planning a lot of times becomes something on paper that looks pretty that's never executed. So I like to just say simply strategy, having strategy in place that will allow you to understand where you are at every stage of growth and what you're looking to achieve.
So let's back up a second again.
Okay.
If you're helping the client be customer focused, isn't the strategy of being customer focused, isn't once that's in place and then the processes are in place, that in turn you just go in the right direction?
You are going in the right direction, but every strategy that a company has that they're focused on, each one should be tied to the other. So, and it all begins with, what's the vision of the company? What's their, what are they looking to achieve from a vision standpoint? What's their mission? And then, on a annual basis, what are their goals? What are their goals for the year? And in everything that you do, every strategy that you implement, do they tie to that vision, that mission, even your core business offerings, your goals? Do they all tie together so that everything aligns, and so that you don't have one part of your business is going in one direction, another part of your business going in a different direction? So yes, what you're saying is true. that any given strategy, yeah, it does give a result, but does that result tie to the other strategies you have in place?
Okay. So that kind of comes to the next spot is do you also end up spending a fair amount of time um, enabling or ensuring that they are able to identify the key data to collect and the frequency of reviewing it so that they know where they are every step of the process?
Absolutely. One of the key things to any successful business, and I learned this from my large enterprise corporate experiences, is that everything is really data driven, and you have to have the right KPIs in place and understand what those KPIs are in developing those, as well as in tracking them on a regular basis, making adjustments as needed based on data. So data, being a data-driven company, every company rather should be data-driven. And in order to do that, you need to have the right KPIs in place. And so we help our clients understand what those are and to implement them and to use them on a regular basis.
Okay, yeah, this has been a great conversation, and we're kind of nearing the end. So I have to ask you, what would be a kind of a final additional comment that you'd like to add?
Yeah, so my final comment is that, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, that scalable growth doesn't happen by accident. It's intentional. It comes with planning. It comes with having the right mindset in place. And that mindset then leads you into putting the right strategies in place. And so that's my final comment, is that it doesn't happen by accident. Says to them that they want to take their particular business to its pinnacle, to reach its potential. I'm willing to connect, and I'm here to connect. And whether it has to do with scalable growth for you, operational excellence, or even putting a strategy in place so that your business can grow, schedule a free consultation with me, and we'll begin to work on crafting a tailored strategy for you, that whether you're looking to attract strategic investors or simply just to grow and be efficient in your business, I'd love to have that conversation with you so that you can dominate your market.
Charles, you've given us some phenomenal information for our listeners to zero in on as relates to moving from a performance that again is plateauing and being able to move them to the next level. And we're not done with you. So we want to come back on April 10 and spend more time talking about, again, this idea of strategic planning with clarity and simplicity that brings scaling to an operation. And so in between that time frame, if you could share with our listeners how to get a hold of you if they would like to follow up immediately rather than waiting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, Dennis. Your questions were meaningful to me and allowed us to have at least a high level conversation. But yeah, strategic planning, meaningful strategic planning is big for any business. And so if anything that's been said here today resonates with any listeners and you'd like to take your company to the pinnacle of its potential, let's connect. And if there are insights you'd like to get from a vision standpoint to scale your company to the growth that you desire, operational excellence, strategic planning, whatever it may be, you can reach me at www.xelantt.com. Just like my name says here, and the actual website is here. And so you can go to those places and book a free consultation, and we'll love to talk with you to craft a tailored strategy that's just right for you and to help you either attract strategic buyers or to just grow your company. Well, thank you, Dennis.
Thank you again. And similarly, if you'd like to learn how to use your cash to pay less interest so that you can achieve some of the things that Charles has talked about, my website is www.cashmapapp.com, and my email address is dennis@cashmapconsulting.com. And we look forward to connecting with you again on April 11th. Have a great day and a great month, and
April 10th, I believe.
all the success. Yes.
All right. Thank you.